Farrell will step out. We'll wait for the siren. And the Western Bulldogs have absolutely crushed Port Adelaide. They overwhelmed them through the midfield. Everyone had a lick of the ice cream. And the Dogs win their 5th game of the season and march into the top 4 as it stands. They run out winners by 90 points.
Alrighty, hello and welcome to the Creedcast. My name is Dave, and as always, thank you for joining us for this latest descent into hell with the Port Adelaide Football Club. And I'm on my lonesome tonight. Jamie is unfortunately a late out. He hit the injury report on Saturday with a little bit of a jagged back from some doing some work around the house. We hung out down there on Saturday afternoon and evening for his housewarming, which was great. But he was dealing with a little bit of back soreness on Saturday. It's only gotten worse in the subsequent days, and he's also dealing with a bit of a fever as well. So kind of hit from multiple angles with injury, both physical and then obviously a little bit of sickness as well. So get well soon, Jamie. The podcast is certainly lesser without you, but I will soldier on for this episode tonight to get this one out, which, to be fair, no one wants to be here for this one. I know Jamie would love to commiserate with me, but it'll be a bit quicker tonight with me just getting through it myself. So, that is back to the footy. Port Adelaide. On Saturday, it reminded me of, and I'm just doing a bit with the World War II analogies, but I was trying to think of what to compare this to. And obviously war and footy are no comparison, but I have a degree in history and love to do this, and it's a little bit of my personality. The experience of going through Saturday was a bit like the first quarter, second quarter was like when the USS Indianapolis was torpedoed in 1945. And for those out there with a little bit of background, the USS Indianapolis was operating through years of World War II, but at this time had actually helped deliver some of the components of the atomic bomb in the Pacific Theater, and was on its way back after delivering these bits when it was torpedoed by a Japanese submarine and sunk in 12 minutes, I think, taking 300 of its 1,200 almost strong crew down with it immediately. But the other, 900 odd were set adrift in the ocean. And this is where the analogy gets to the second half, because I felt like I was adrift in that ocean for days. And now what those men went through is no comparison. But just for the footy to World War II analogy, I felt like I was adrift in that ocean for days. And if you've watched Jaws, the story that Quint tells as they're drinking on the boat is this story of the sharks that circled in those days after as they were attracted to that wreck, dragging away some of the dead and attacking some of the living that were still there. I think it was only 300 odd of the 1,200 ended up actually being found alive. That's macabre, but that's just, oh God, what a demolition that the Bulldogs put on us on Saturday afternoon. What a way to start the weekend. Like, just 12:50 on a Saturday. Like, let's settle into our weekend, watch the footy, and watch Port Adelaide get absolutely slaughtered. 20-11, 131 to 5-11, 41 was the final. It was a horrible day of footy, and it was the second time that your Port Adelaide Footy Club has lost by 90 plus points this year. Which is already kind of one of those things that makes you think there's a little bit of rotten in Denmark with just the entirety of what's going on this season. As much as we've had some hope from some results in recent weeks, the fact that we've had 2 90-point losses in the season, previously something that Ken Hinkley's Port Adelaide Footy Club had not even dealt with at any time in his tenure, is concerning as far as how it's relates to kind of what our performance level and what our maximum output for this season could possibly be. It is of high concern to me, and there's a lot of statistical markers, unfortunately, that we've been pointing to across our review so far this season that are of concern again in this game. There was a few moments early in the game. Now, the game starts well. Oh, okay. We get the first goal where high pressure Bulldogs' pressure was good too, but Port's pressure was almost off the charts. I think at one point, about 5 minutes into the game, Port Adelaide's pressure rating was at 263, which is just insane in the pressure metrics. The Dogs were at 218, which is above AFL average, well above AFL average. So both teams were hitting the pressure gauge early and often, and applying good pressure with each other. Combined with the conditions down in Ballarat, I know when I was talking about on the preview last week, I kind of said, the weather report wasn't looking like it was going to be too bad, but just the way the wind hits that ground, you kind of forget. But watching that way that ball was moving as kicks were being taken, it's just the suburban ground nature of it. So, yeah, pressure was good from Port, but there was already these early signs as to just not being completely with it as far as whether our game plan was going to hold up in the long run of the game, and obviously we know it didn't. The Dogs were just when the Dogs were getting. We did okay when we had the ball in our forward half, and our forward half pressure game, as we noted in the preview last week on the Patreon show, we're top 4 in the league for forward half pressure. So when we get it, can kind of lock it into the forward half, and with our forward half pressure, we're decent, but we just weren't doing much with it. The stoppage game was starting to. I think it was okay in that first quarter, but obviously by the end of the game, the stoppages were well won by both from the centre and then even in the stoppage. I'm pretty sure, just to roll down to the stats quickly here, in the clearance game, centre clearances, they smashed us. 17-8 was the centre clearance numbers across the game, but even the stoppage, it was 32-27. So they marginally won that, but considering both teams averaged 26, it was a win for the Dogs there, and they were just better at their win. Even if they were winning the ball, not winning the ball at the initial stoppage, they were just getting the ball eventually anyway. So it's kind of like the secondary stoppage or secondary possession after the stoppage was still going more or less the Dogs' way as well. But that first quarter, the concerning numbers early, despite the fact that we were finding a way, we were defending okay. Defending up the field. When it actually got down to the Dogs took maximum advantage of more limited opportunities in that first quarter. But yeah, I mean, at one point in the first quarter, it was 7. Just to talk about the clearance numbers, how they ended up. At one point in the first quarter, the clearance numbers were 7-0 to Port. So we did win the first 7 clearances of the game. So to kind of look at the clearance numbers there and go, well, we won the first 7 of the game. So from that point on, I mean, we finished with 35. So from that point on, the Dogs won the clearances 49-28. The final numbers are 49-35. If we're 7-0, almost halfway through the first quarter, that means from that point on, whenever that metric was taken, they won 49-28, which is just a turnaround. And they just kind of they held on in those first 10 minutes, but there was also we were not taking care of the ball very well when we got it. So there was a moment, and 3 minutes in, where Burgoyne on the wing kind of. He's got a chance to go forward with it, but he kind of just spins back, and I think Rosie might be involved. I'm not exactly 100% sure, but there's this thing that frustrates the living fuck out of me in how we play when we're just slightly when we play with the edge that we played with against Hawthorn, or in certain moments in games this year, it unfortunately hasn't been nearly regular enough. But when we play with an edge, we play with a little bit more decisiveness and a want to get the ball forward at all costs. Not obviously recklessly, but we will just take a chance with whether it be just our run going forward or taking the kick going forward. But there was multiple times in that first quarter, and this was one where Burgoyne kind of he looks forward, but then he kind of spins around and darts back, looks for a handball backwards. And I've said before, when you start handballing around in areas and actually turning around and going backwards and then handballing, you're just inviting pressure into an area that you don't really have much room for error anyway. And we ended up turning the ball over in that point. It was just for nothing. If you take the grass and go forward, the worst thing that's probably going to happen is a forward 50 area stoppage, maybe on the boundary. And look, if you really shank the kick, you might get insufficient intent or something. But it's better than what you've ended up with is a stoppage or worse. I think it was actually a turnover and probably possibly a Dogs rare entry early there. And it's just one of those it's just that there was a few moments like that, and it's just this timidity to our play in these kind of games. And it's not that I think the pressure was good early. There was good tackling was good. Our sport, like little intangibles were okay, but we weren't actually controlling the ball very well. It came up, I think, towards the end of the quarter that the marks in the quarter were 26-9 the Bulldogs' way. So when the Bulldogs were getting it, they were just, and we were dropping marks all over the place as well. Conditions were a factor in this game. You could see the ball, I think, when that first kick from, I think, the goal that Karmas eventually kicks, which we need to deal with. We need to deal with that better, by the way. But that one just fades right across the goal. But the Dogs quickly adapted to the conditions. They were marking the ball better. They did overrun a couple, like kicks that just kept on floating because they had that extra oomph from the ball. But we just did it more. And then when we actually had a chance to take a mark, I don't know why, we just really ham-fisted in how we attempted to take marks, and there was just, whereas the Bulldogs weren't, and so we probably, what the marking opportunities were in that quarter, I'd love to know, like potential marks versus actual marks, because all I've got is mark numbers. It's about 26 marks to 9, which was about a minute and a half to go in the first quarter is what I've got. I just take these notes as I'm watching, and they bring them up on the screen because I can't actually access the quarter, minute by minute breakdown after a game from any great data that the higher ups at the AFL have. I'd love to know what the actual marking opportunities versus actual marks were, but I'm assuming it was probably a lot closer number than what actually got taken. And so that was the story early, and unfortunately, that's kind of what just that control. That's probably what the Bulldogs would have gone in at quarter time, thinking like, look, they had the wind, and that was also a factor. They had the wind, which is, a couple of goal breeze at least, strong breeze to our end, and we go in, 4 points up, 2 goals forward or 2 goals 2, I think it was, or 2. Was it just 2 straight? I'm trying to think. Might have only been a couple of points up. Either way, doesn't fucking matter at this point. We lost by 90 points in the end. But yeah, the Bulldogs would have gone into quarter time thinking, look, we've established some control here. Port, tackling well, okay, pressure, decent, but they're not taking much opportunity. They're already, because of the way they're able to control the ball, they're having to bring our forwards up. Our forwards aren't really getting to operate where they want to. We're not getting their pressure and their just relentless hunting pack style, which, Bulldogs, of course they're hunting in packs, but no, they really were just exploding into contests, and one guy would go and then there'd be another one. If the ball came out because of the crash of the contest, there'd be another dog immediately there to kind of contest for that one. If that one spills out, there's just another one. They just had this rotating pack mentality as to how to attack the ball, and we just didn't. We just had guys kind of waiting around the stoppage and kind of waiting for an opportunity rather than grabbing the opportunity, and that's what was really frustrating. It is interesting to note though, we were plus 10 contested after the first quarter, so there was all this stuff about Port lose contested ball, they lose the game, but then this year it started to become a thing that, well, we'd lost contested ball in a couple of games but still won them, so maybe it's not as important, but it is still a concerning metric. After the first quarter, while not up by a lot, we were up by a lot in contested ball, but again, this is where that early number versus the final number comes in, kind of like, so the final number for contested ball was 147 to 131, the Dogs' way, obviously. So that they win by plus 16. But then when you think about the fact that we were plus 10 after the first quarter, that's actually a plus 26 win for the Dogs from quarter time onwards. So they just really established dominance after the first quarter. And a lot of those little signs as to how the game might go were there in the first quarter. Unfortunately, we were the clanger numbers are horrible for this game, but there was already a few in that first quarter, just fumbly. There was one point in the first couple of minutes when we were actually having those good periods of play. Jordan Sweet actually has the ball in his hand. He kind of just mishandles it, just drops it, and it's in a sequence of hand passing just in the kind of just forward of center. And it's Jordan Sweet's either going to, I can't remember if he was looking for another handball or he was going to try to take the ball to foot and kick it forward. I can't remember exactly, but instead he just fucking drops it. And we were we were fumbling with the ball. We weren't taking our marks. We were timid around the contest, far more timid around the contest. Butters had an incredible first quarter. He was fucking explosive through the contest and through the stoppage and everything like that. But he was kind of a lone hand in that sense. Yeah, I mean, the clanger numbers, I just scrolled down to it and then got immediately distracted. This is why I need Jamie here. But yeah, clangers 61-45. Like, we got spat. Like, that is just a very, generally a lot of games so far this year without having them in front of me. The clanger numbers have been, within 6 or 7 of the other team, and he's kind of just, which team is winning, had a few more or less. It doesn't really, against, we had 7 more than North Melbourne in the previous week's game. It was 67-60, but it was, still a bit closer. And the turnover numbers in that one were 62-58 North Melbourne's way. Whereas in this one, our turnovers were 60-55. So the turnover numbers are reasonably close, but yeah, they were just better. Like, obviously the clearance game and the contest game and everything like that after quarter time was just and it's the disposal numbers as well. The disposal numbers are fucking woeful, actually, and that's part of their ability to retain the ball through marking the ball. But yeah, the disposals 450. So they are 415 to 305. So the Dogs had 110 more disposals than us. They had 30 more marks, 87-57. Obviously, and that all that translates to a massive inside 50 differential as well, 67-41. So minus 16, I wish it was minus 16, minus 26, carry the 10, minus 26 in inside 50s, which is, these are numbers, I mean, we lost by 90 points, but these are numbers you expect from, West Coast of the last couple of years, or North Melbourne when they're really in the doldrums. Those are terrible, terrible, terrible bottom of the table, bottom 4 rebuilding team numbers, and maybe, the questions out there of our list and everything at the moment, where we are as far as our list build goes is a question that unfortunately gets raised after games like this, because there is a deficiency there somewhere for that to happen. Obviously, with those disposal numbers comes the disposal efficiency as well, which was incredible for the Dogs. They ran at almost 75% disposal efficiency versus our 67.2. So essentially almost 3 out of every 4 disposals were an effective disposal for them, which for a team with so much talent through midfield, whether you talk about the veterans in the Libbers or the Bontempellis, and obviously Ed Richards had a fantastic game. I think he was Champion Data's top-rated player for the entire round was Ed Richards. And then you got guys like Joel Frazier who's come through, and it hurts my heart deeply that Brendan Lade was mentioned in commentary and his role, obviously, as an assistant coach at the Western Bulldogs. Brendan Lade, of course, former champion of our club and still much beloved by me. I loved the man from Kangaroo Island, Brendan Lade, but his kind of work in bringing Joel Frazier from halfback into midfield across the off-season, and he certainly kicked a fantastic goal against us. Unfortunately, just one of many that he kicked. They've got so many good prime movers through the middle and on the outside, and they don't need any help by us just not providing enough pressure. And our pressure rating throughout the game wasn't terrible, but you kind of saw just the way once a team can turn the ball over against us and get the forward run going, we couldn't get near him. Again, the questions about a fitness arise after such games like this. I understand the question. I have the question myself. I just find it hard to think that we, as a professional AFL team, and I know the cynics out there going, well, it's Port Adelaide under Koshy and rah, 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 rah. And again, you're welcome to that opinion. I understand to a certain point. I'm just not going to get too into the weeds of overreaction there. I'm actually just, I want to know why our fitness just constantly looks, and I don't know if it's just that our game plan isn't developed well enough on game day, that we're just out of position. Are we just out of position? And that's sometimes what I notice. We never have the number of players in the right area to stop forward run or movement, or just are able to apply enough pressure in the moments. When a team is getting a run like this, it was very similar. It's very obviously the similarities to the Collingwood game to open the season are obvious, being the margin is 1 point differential between the two losses. But yeah, it was a procession in that second half. And despite all that some of that hard work that happened in that first quarter, and it was unfortunately it was very. I hate to say it, but there is a soft edge to this team when it's the old saying, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, and the tough just never get going for us in these two instances where a game where the groundswell of momentum is just completely against us. We just wilt rather than fight against it, and it's incredibly concerning to me. There's teams across the last few years that have had struggles at times, but you watch them like. The comparison was made early in the season to how Brisbane started last year, and how they lost 3 or 4 on about the first 3 games of the season. I think they lost. And obviously, we're still halfway through the season. We're outside of the 8. But the thing was, they weren't losing games by large margins. They were close losses. I think those first 3 losses were probably by a combined, margin of 5 goals across the 3 games, maybe a bit more. But I know a couple of them were pretty close. So while they were losing the games, they weren't losing badly. There was some game plan things that were making they were still making it tough on the opposition. We just aren't. We are, and the Western Bulldogs must have just been licking their lips once they recognised what was happening towards the end of that first quarter and into the second quarter when they started really getting their run going, and just seeing that we couldn't go with them. Team English was starting to really dominate from the middle and in the ruck contest, and Bonampelli was held quiet in that first quarter, and still they were within a few points. So they must have been like, "Oh, geez, we've got away with Bont going, just not having a factor in that first quarter, and we can still get going." And just their prime movers were just ready to rock and roll, and there was no real opportunity or way to stop them. There was just no opportunity to do anything to stop them, and it's really, really concerning to me that this soft edge to our team and just the squad makeup on the day just isn't made for arresting opposition, the groundswell of momentum that our opposition can develop in those moments. We just don't have the toughness in the team at the moment. I'm not saying it can't get there with some of these players. Obviously, we're talking about guys, Jason HORNE-FRANCIS again. I'd like to see a little bit more from him in a game like this, but again, he's young. He will get there. We've got a young forward line as well, so how they manage not being able to play their game. Young key forward line. Obviously they've got the Smalls are a little bit more veteran age down there. But how they manage that, I think, and even down the back end, I think we probably saw Asava get beaten, I think, a little bit more than he has in recent times. Alir couldn't really play the game he wanted to either. It was just coming in too easy as well. But then they just, probably couldn't hold the line as well as they would have hoped together, because obviously this is the first game we've seen Finlayson. I was just looking at Finlayson's name. But Alir and Asava get truly badly beaten together this year. Obviously that first game against Collingwood was Alir and, the makeup defense that it was at the time. So, yeah, it's just across the lines. You just didn't really have any big winners. Zach Butters, even, I think his first quarter, he had 9 or 10 disposals. He ends up with 24 for the game. So he doesn't have the same impact from quarter time onwards. Still, tries hard. It's just the way the game was going from that point on, unfortunately, was going very much the other direction. And so you do get, your influence is quelled when you can't do as much. But it is even just in the contest and stuff, and in the stoppage, he just didn't quite have as much cut and thrust through there. And they did, I think, at some point in the first quarter, I think it was mentioned that they did move someone to, I can't remember who it was at this point in time, but he did start getting a bit more close checking at some point in that first quarter, and that probably helped quell what he was doing early, because Butters was off the chain early in that first quarter. And blank check, please, for that man. I don't know if that's going to be enough in the whatever negotiations are going to happen. I don't want to get into it too much, but it's just one of those things. And it's been, again, it's in the media this week. Yeah, blank check for Butters, please. Like, just fucking give him what he wants. He can have a suburb for all I care. That man is insanely good, and he's could be the future if he wants to be. So anyway, I'm going to take a quick break to gather my thoughts before I get into a little bit more of the stat stuff before we get to the segment. Again, it's going to be a lot shorter today because I am on my own, and I can only yap to myself for so long before I actually lose my mind. So anyway, I'll be back in a moment. Alrighty, before I get into a little bit more of the ins and outs of how this game went, just a shout out to our Patreon and a shout out to the few but the loyal that are on the Patreon at the moment. We appreciate you. For those not on the Patreon, that's where we do our squad show each Thursday night. It's usually Thursday nights where we do more of the in-depth preview for the upcoming game, and then we just have a bit of banter. There's usually something to talk about at that point because that show is shorter. Then it gives us the opportunity to talk about something else. So last week we talked about the Kane versus North Melbourne stuff and just like how North Melbourne had handled the week of news that they'd had in the aftermath of our game. And the week before, I think we talked about just some more of our memories from Gather Round. So there was a lot of chat about Gather Round and what we'd done across the course of the weekend and how we'd enjoyed it. So yeah, the Patreon show on Thursday nights kind of allows us a little bit of room to just preview the game more because we do. Once Thursday night comes around, we've gotten away from the previous week's game. We're more focused on the week coming up rather than trying to crash it together as we did last year out of necessity with us in different time zones. But now that we're both in South Australia at the moment, it's a lot easier to catch up a couple of times a week. So Patreon. There's two tiers. There's a $5.99 tier, which everyone I think at the moment that's there is signed up to. There is a one that's more expensive, as you essentially get the same stuff, but you're at a sponsor, and there will be some special stuff that'll come with that once people start getting signed up to that. If they do, but if they don't, then they don't. It's just an option if people do want to help us out just that little bit more, if they have the capacity to do so. But at $5.99 a month, you're getting it's the price of what's the old two iced coffees at on the run for $5.99. I think it was. I think it might be $6.99 or something now. But so we're at the old OTR prices for two Farmers Union iced coffees. Shout out to those that love their iced coffee and the random iced coffee tangents we went on late last year. $5.99 for the Patreon. I realized a couple of weeks ago that you can actually set it to have a 7-day trial as well. So I'll click that across. So you can actually sign up and get a week free before you even start paying. So you can listen to this week's episode before you start paying if you want. So, and for those that sign up this month, shout out to Jack if you're listening, who signed up last month, you'll get this too. But anyone that signs up to the $5.99 tier this month of May, I'm going to send out a little sticker pack too. If you sign up to the sponsor tier, then I'll send out a sticker pack and a few badges as well. But if you sign up to the base tier, then I'm going to send out sticker packs this month. So I think there's an option to put your address in when you sign up. If you don't want to put the address in, no worries. I'll get in touch with you and ask for your address. And if you don't want it, then you don't want it. That's fine. But you will get a sticker pack if you want it if you sign up this month for the Patreon. So shout out for that. And let's get back into talking about this shit show of a game. Jamie was talking about earlier with me through text that he, in his little sick day that he's had, that he watched The Other Guys today, which is, of course, the Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg classic. I'm a peacock. You gotta let me fly. And I was just thinking that this game really needed some other guys because that's where this game was won and lost, was just there's not enough guys that went with the very few that had an impact on this game. And Butters did his work. Connor Rozee, it wasn't, and no one had their best game. No one has their best games in games where you lose by this many points. HORNE-FRANCIS operating at 40% disposal efficiency. Horrific numbers. Still got 7 clearances, but just the numbers weren't that good for anyone in a way. Like I mean, Rozee gets his 575 meters gain, but he gets some time in the middle again, and that really frustrates me a little bit too. Just as a side note, that I don't know if we need to just stick with Rozee. Maybe if you throw him to a couple of But if you just mess around with him in games too much, you're taking away from what he's doing where you want him to be. Like, it seems that they want him to be on that halfback role. If they want him to play the halfback role, then let him play the halfback role and put the onus on your engine room guys to arrest things, because, you know, between Butters, Wines, Drew, HORNE-FRANCIS, there's enough talent there, you know, and Jamie's called for. I think Pal Pepper did he get some CBAs? This one would actually be. I don't know if I'll have to look that up in a moment, but I don't know if he got CBAs, but I feel like I just vaguely remember Pal Pepper getting involved up the field a little bit. But either way, maybe I could be misremembering. But I know Jamie's called for that a little bit more. There's other levers to pull, other than pulling Rosie out of where he's really performing effectively well. And this game maybe just was going to shit anyway, so who cares at a certain point? But it is just I don't want to see us, you know, because if that midfield's getting beaten, then I don't know what point of difference Rosie's going to add to it. As much as I think he's quite a talented midfielder as well, you're pulling away from what you're going into the game planning to do with Rosie, and he's performing that job well. It just it feels like a break glass in case of emergency thing that you just shouldn't actually have to do. You should have other, you know, this group just should be better than that, and that's what the onus needs to be on them to figure it out. And clearly, there's just so many more problems at play here with this side currently. Anyway, I mentioned Jordan Sweet. He had a great hit out game, 46 hit outs to 30, but where Tim English just won around the game, around the ground, like, you know, but despite being plus 16 in hit outs, Jordan Sweet, you know, English was 11 to 10 winner on hit outs to advantage. Sweet always has a couple of tackles, and he's a decent pressure act numbers, but Team English, the big stat that's been going around the AFL socials, obviously, was his 17 score involvements, which equaled a record of Todd Goldstein, who had 17 goal involvements against, you guessed it, Port Adelaide in 2019. So we seem to just be a team that can give an opposition ruckman like one of those all-time games. He kicked three goals. You know, just had 3 marks inside 50. So he was had a classic mobile ruckman's game where he could do some work in the middle, do some damage at the stoppage, but still, you know, do some damage upfield as well. And that's just where kind of his game, he kind of got the win against Sweet. Sweet's still pure ruckcraft is decent. I'm not saying he's had it, but because I know someone was talking about him on the weekend and already starting to muse about whether Soldo can get a run again. It's just like, no, Sweet's still the best we've got at the moment. He does need to pick up, like, maybe he's going through a bit of his first slump since his, you know, emergence as our number one ruckman. So there is some things for Sweetie to work on. But to also mention, he has had now 4 weeks on the bounce against some very, very good ruckmen, and there is just a lot of talented ruckmen in this competition. He's just probably going through a bit of a form slump-ish while he's going up against some pretty damn good ruckmen across the league at the moment. I mean, you know, Lloyd Meek, Brodie Grundy, Tristan Cherry, and then Team English is a pretty formidable run of opposition ruckmen, and he's battling well, and he's still winning hitouts. I do appreciate that he's winning hitouts, and I think part of our problems around stoppage isn't completely down to Jordan Sweet. He had this great, I can't even think of when it was, just some point in the game. I do just remember him doing a little tap over the shoulder, like, you know, no look tap, and he's tapped it to a perfect spot where it's kind of like, you know, if it was Paddy Ryder and Robbie Gray, like, they just would have telegraphed it. Or, you know, there was the old Brendan Lade, Sean Burgoyne connection as well. It was one of those taps that you just, if someone had just been running through, but there was no one there, I think the first one to it was honestly a Bulldog. And so, unfortunately, it just, you know, it doesn't end up a win, but the hit out was to a win. It just was a Bulldogs win, unfortunately. So, yeah, he didn't have the stats look great for Tim English and don't look great for Sweet, but there's still, you know, he's winning some hit outs and he's doing some core ruck stuff well. It's just the around the ground stuff. Just he didn't have a great game around in that stuff, whereas Tim English really had one of the all-time kind of great mobile ruckman kind of games. So, and he's just hit some form that he wasn't quite in last year when we did get a win against the Bulldogs. So, yeah, Sweet, I'm sure he'll figure it out. He's still got, he's still relatively young as a football player at the top level. So he's getting some pretty decent lessons the last few weeks, and hopefully he will take them on board. One thing that really pissed me off in this game as well was just I've already mentioned the stoppage game and all that stuff was pretty average, but it was even just the work after stoppage, just how, they were winning the ball from stoppage, but then they were just devastating in there, particularly in the forward half, because just looking at the score, kind of the score origin and score source. They kicked 12 goals 6 to our 3-3 from stoppage, and in where the score originated from in this one was they kicked 14 goals 7 91 to our 3-7 25 from forward half. So they were just really devastating their forward half kind of score game. Just being at once it got to that second half and they were able to lock it in there more and repeat inside 50 entries, getting the stoppage, and then just their work around their presentation for each other, and just our lack of ability to impact once the ball got away from stoppage or something like that. They just had open runners. There was one guy, I just remember one goal where it kind of came, it was a top of the 50 arc kind of stoppage. They got the handball out and they just went like 3 or 4 handballs until it got opened up for, I can't remember who it was, but I know the commentators were saying, man, they could have gone one more handball. There was another guy waiting, but whoever took the kick just decided to take the kick. And they're also really smart with their ball use. They just kind of, again, I mentioned earlier, they use the conditions better. We were really slapping the ball away at goal and kind of putting too much onto it. Like this goal, there's a few examples of them just putting the ball up towards, accurately towards goal, and just letting the wind do some of the work as well, because they were just smarter with the conditions as well. They kicked 6 goals 5 to 1 goal 8 for us from turnover. So yeah, there was Jamie texted me earlier as well, and kind of as he's tried to catch up on the game. He said, at one point in the third quarter, they were 8 goals 3 to our 3 goals 8. So there was a point early in the third where scoring opportunities were actually tied. It was just we'd been, quite average in front of goal. Mitch Georgiades stabbed it a couple twice that he just put to the same area with the same result because he wasn't accounting for the wind well enough. These things happen. These unfortunately, sometimes you just do have a game where you just absolutely shit in the conditions, but it was just made even worse by the fact the Dogs were devastatingly accurate under the same conditions, which just means that you don't have, well, you do have the excuse of saying you just didn't play the conditions well. When another team plays them that well, it just means that you are absolutely second rate, rather than just two teams dealing with the same conditions. They didn't look bothered by them at all. They were, kicking goals, both set shots, but a lot of goals out of general play that were really were quite good shots at goal, and they just handled the conditions better. But their just ability to win the ball in the forward half and generate scores from it, just from better setup around the ball, better presentation for each other. Obviously, their pressure as well, and hurrying us into turnovers, and just turnovers, clangers, whatever you want to call them, each and every one. They were making us look decidedly second rate, and that once they started getting that forward half ascendancy, they really made that pressure tell in some devastatingly accurate goal kicking. Because both of us scored 7 points from our forward half, but they kicked 14 goals where we could only kick the 3. All right, I'll get to it'll be a pretty quick segments tonight, and then wrapping up this one. Again, keeping it short for you guys for once. For those that look for a shorter podcast, you're welcome for tonight. But I do look forward to getting back into having someone to bounce it off of more going forward. But before we get to that, I'd be remiss if obviously didn't mention, unfortunately, the news out of the weekend. And just I did text Jamie the other day and said, just give me 1 week. We don't have to talk about something news-wise, but the Willie Rioli story in the texting or Instagram messaging, heat of the moment, whatever it is unacceptable. The threats of violence against Bailey Dale from the Western Bulldogs, I think he sent it to a teammate of Dale's and said to tell Dale, to watch out, basically up there in the NT. And it's unacceptable. There's no other way around it. And there's been a couple of other stories since of Willie Rolla making threats on field to players. I think, it's not excusing it. I think it is just that he is a highly emotional person. And in these moments is just making the wrong decisions in how he expresses his emotions. He's lucky he hasn't been sanctioned more for it, I think. And I do appreciate, I think Luke Beveridge in his press conference kind of said, we've dealt with it. Willie's reached out. We appreciate the discretion in these, and this was from Luke Beveridge as well. He said, look, these moments need some careful discretion and understanding and kind of figuring out because it is a weird area to be in, because we watch in the AFL, glorifies the slow motion jumper punching and brawls and the Tigers and Hawthorn stuff on the weekend was like just like the AFL, like, giddy as with being able to see play those kind of highlights over and over. But when it's actual threats of violence, it enters a different area, and it's just not on from Willie. I think, I don't know what needs to happen there, because it's come out they possibly made a threat in Geelong last year when we played Geelong to a player, and then against Essendon earlier this year I've heard as well. So there's 3 moments where he's just said the wrong thing. It's not nothing. I don't think there's anything. There's no notions of any slurs or anything being used, but he's the way it's been described by media is pretty shocking kind of threats, just verbal threats on the field that shock the players involved. And so that stuff's just not on, whatever that may be. I don't want to get into too much of the wondering what it might be, because sorry, there's a bug attacked the back of my leg and it scared the shit out of me, actually. Anyway, I'll continue. I'm not going to cut that out. There's a little bit of fun for you. But yeah, it's just not on. I do think he's lucky he hasn't been sanctioned, and whether the club is having internal discussions about whether he needs to have a club sanctioned week or 2 off and a little bit of counselling as to how to handle that kind of emotionality. Because I don't think Willie as a person, I've said to Jamie a lot, like I actually took some video after the North Melbourne game where he was the one player that ran the entire length of the field to meet the fans at the opposite end of the field while our team was waiting to head off, and Willie essentially made the team wait for like a minute and a half for him to run back after greeting fans at the other end of the field where not many players ran to, or no one ran to at all, before they ran off the field. And you see some of the joy he has when he's warm-ups, when he's kicking the ball to himself and running over and taking selfies with fans and signing autographs. He does seem to have a fairly happy demeanor in these moments, but then clearly there's a volatility in his emotions that gets expressed just a completely unacceptable wrong way in these moments. And it's just like there's a lot of people in the world that deal with emotional volatility when they can be a decent human at heart, but they have moments of emotional volatility that come out and just metabolize in ways that are just absolutely horrifically unacceptable. And thankfully nothing has actually happened. But if, that kind of rhetoric and verbiage that he's been using against fellow professional football players is just unacceptable. We don't accept slurs, whether it be racism, homophobia or anything in between. Those are unacceptable because, they're kind of targeted. This is an incitement of violence in a way, or a threat of violence, is while not the same as a slur, because a slur hits differently. It is still, a very quite shocking and scary to a person to handle that, and in a way is equally as unacceptable to me as any of those other things. And we've talked about, racism and homophobia at different times on this podcast when it has been pertinent to talk about, and I take the same view, and that's why I think Willie's probably lucky. I think there is an element of it is a weird area for the AFL as well. So I kind of understand we're there, but it is probably there is probably a lack of leadership in them. And for mine, it would be interesting if Jamie was on to see if he feels the same. But I think Willie's quite lucky. I also think it is a moment to that he does need a bit of arms wrapped around him. So there needs to be a tender hand here a little bit with this, because there is a different the emotions that get you to say threats of saying stuff like this is probably it is just an emotional volatility thing, and I find it is probably needing a caring hand on him, and maybe just checking in with him a little bit more, and maybe he does need a little bit more. I don't know what he has at the club at the moment. A lot of players need mental health consistent care, because they're just depending on how they are as a person. Not just players, athletes, people. A lot of people, and it's something that thankfully the stigma is further and further being removed, that, it's okay to just be regularly, in therapy as a way of just maintaining your mental equilibrium. And again, I don't know what Willie's got going at the moment. I think these examples that are coming out, if they are all as they are, and then obviously even it's a different situation, but the social media post after the Hawthorn game, there is some emotional, he's letting go of some emotional baggage in negative ways in these moments. And it is a threat to his career not that I think his career is, he's having in great form as a football player at the moment, and has got a lot of years left ahead of him if he handles it the right way. But these kind of things can threaten to derail your kind of form line and everything. And from a football standpoint, we don't want that. And from a human standpoint, I don't want that for Willie either. So hopefully the club's kind of having a little bit more in-depth chats with Willie to see where he's at, figure out where his headspace is at. If he isn't in any form of counselling, therapy, whatever you want to call it, he probably does at least need someone, whether it's informal, whatever it is, someone, whether it's coach at the club that he trusts, or someone, captain, whoever it is, or if it is a formal counselling therapy kind of line for a few weeks or whatever, he does need someone to kind of figure out what's going on in these moments. Because that is, if these examples have now come out, that's 3 times in the last 12 months. And then 4 times if you count that social media post as well. So, something needs to kind of change a little bit there for Willie. Again, his football is actually reasonably good across all of this anyway. So it's not like, but it will, if this stuff keeps happening, it will affect his football, because the AFL won't take a lenient. I think he's probably gotten a warning because it's come out and they've said, all right, this is now public. We've taken a soft approach at this moment, but if it happens again, the AFL won't be soft, because they're already copying it a little bit at the moment. Now, I think it's okay that they've handled it this way. I wouldn't have been mad. And I think I said before, I would have, maybe he's lucky, I think, but I'm also okay with it. I think they're taking a gentle approach, which, as someone like I like that, but you need to, as in Willie's shoes, he needs to acknowledge that they've taken a gentler approach. And who knows what happens if stories keep coming out, but hopefully, I think the AFL was already aware of those anyway. But he won't get a gentle hand again. If this kind of stuff keeps happening, he will start finding himself missing games, I think. And he's quite lucky he hasn't missed one already, but from this kind of stuff. And I want to see the best for Willie, both as a human and a football player for the Port Adelaide Football Club going forward. So hopefully we can kind of get a handle on it pretty quickly, because it is a concern at the moment for me as to how his headspace is, as to why these things have occurred recently, and seems a little bit more often than we were aware. All right, we'll get into the segments in a second here. It's going to be a really quick one because it's just me, and I'm just going to nominate one for each moment, so there won't be any voting this week. Finding more than one goal is probably difficult anyway. And I just got one in mind, and we only kicked 5 for the day. And I have one Wilson Gray in mind that I just want to nominate, and I can't think of another one at the moment because my replay watching was quite. It was a bit last night, and I was having a few beers and just wasn't enjoying watching the replay. And it's hard to get the Wilson Gray finding one again in a game that's just going to shit. So I have the one Wilson Gray, the one goal nomination. So we'll get into it now, and they'll just go into what update, because I keep forgetting to say this. What I'm going to do at the halfway point of the season, I'll be making a package of the Wilson Gray nominations and Goal of the Week nominations. for the first half of the year in the bye week, and then I'll put up a vote, and there'll be a voting video package and then a voting link with that to nominate the top one for the first half of the year. Then we'll do that at the end of the year, and then I think what we'll do is then whatever the two winners of the two halves of the year are, Jamie and I might go through and pick one each to add into a final four to then see who wins out of those final four. So there'll be a little bit of a judge picks of us as the podcasters, and then there'll be the community pick, and then the community pick will ultimately pick the final one from those final four, which I think will be a fun, really fun end of year kind of exercise to do. But for now, it is time to get into our Wilson Gray nomination for the week.
Down, Gray doing brilliantly, getting through to Monfries. That's Gray at his best.
Wilson kicks hard and kicks cruelly.
Robbie! Let him entertain you!
I feel better after listening to that. I already forgot that the game has occurred. No, I haven't. It was terrible. But my nomination for the Wilson Gray Award this week was a pretty nice moment from the first quarter. It was Joey Richards tackling, I think it was Bailey Williams, in the forward pocket for a shot at goal, catching Williams holding the ball.
Cleary wasn't able to take the mark. Now Lob. They just got to try and find a way out here. The Western Bulldogs got to be careful. That's a 360 holding the ball. Terrific tackle from Joe Richards.
For the fake from Williams, which he's usually very good at. So that's an excellent tackle. And now the opportunity.
It was a great tackle. He closes him down and kind of like doesn't bite on Williams trying to fake him out, and just tackles him really well. And for Richard's size, he's quite a tenacious speed. He's got good closing speed, and he's quite tenacious in his tackling, and doesn't let kind of a size difference phase him at all. And he just all arms, just getting around him in the tackle and making sure to catch him holding the ball. And unfortunately, he didn't finish. Because at that point we were 1-0, 3-0 up, and it would have been a really nice early break if he could have finished. But there was some real wind on the kick after going for goal from a pretty tight angle in the pocket as well, to be fair. So, but we did see in the game against Hawthorn earlier in the year, he's a reasonable set shot. I think this was just the wind definitely played its part there. But Joey Richards with another nice tackle, which I think I've nominated him for a tackle already this year. So he's showing some stuff about what we were looking for, what we were looking to get out of him when we brought him in the off season last year. Alrighty, moving right along. Goal of the week.
Monfries has kicked a goal. Unbelievable. Haven't seen anything like that. It's gone at right angle.
Flashpoint, Stevie Motlop, what a time!
Floating on air. My nomination for the goal of the week is our first goal of the day, and it was Willie Rioli's goal. He ended up with a couple on the day, but it's his first one of the day, snapping it out of some pretty tight traffic there in the pocket, with originally called touched as well, but it was actually a goal for Willie.
Bontempelli, as he so often does, positions himself for the opposition hit. Rioli's kick was touched off the boot. You heard the call.
So Rioli with the kick.
Yep, that's obvious. So it's Bontempelli getting the hands there. It's not as obvious to me as Geordie, but he was very. You can see he was all over it very quickly.
Let's get this
but it's
game
interesting
moving.
that the field umpire called touched off the boot.
He's left hand move, Joey.
Very confident. I'm sure it
Nearly
probably
dislocates
is.
his finger. A little bit grainy, but it could be. It could well and true. This is the vision here. This is the angle.
Review complete. Looking at this angle, we can see a gap between the ball and the Bulldogs player at all times.
Wow, there's a little turn.
Scoreboard.
Gee, I was adamant that his left hand had hit the ball.
You were, Jordan.
I couldn't have been stronger.
It's just Bontempelli there. The little reckless handball deep in the defensive 50. Rioli's been in great goal-kicking form.
Yeah, he has.
He's playing super footy.
I found it really interesting as well. He obviously snaps. He gets called touched from, and it was Bontempelli going in for the smother. And I had my notes, it's really cerebral from Willie. With a couple of weeks ago, I think, was it against Sydney? There was one that he kicked and it was called touched, and he straight away was saying to the umpire, like he's doing the arms, and if you're watching on YouTube, this is what I'm doing right now. If you're listening, then I'm just doing the touched motion. And Willie was doing that to the umpire, like saying, yeah, no, it was definitely touched. Like, don't even need to, like, you don't need to review it. I'm honest enough to say myself, though I'd probably like the goal, it was touched, like, and it was it still did get reviewed because the AFL does their processes anyway. Though there is that interesting notion. It's kind of like walking in cricket. Like, you know, if the player walks, then, you know, even if you haven't called it out, then he's fucking walked. Like, what are you going to do? If the player that's kicked the ball is saying, yeah, it was touched, like, do you just honesty system? But I mean, to be fair, there could be a situation at some time, and maybe it's happened before that I can't remember, that a player could say it was touched, and then they go on review and they go, oh shit, it wasn't touched. Like, I thought it was too. So still probably good that they do the reviews. But, you know, a few weeks ago, he's doing that. This one, he straight away was just like, no, that was a goal. Like, it wasn't touched. And then I can't remember who it was. It was Jordan Lewis on commentary. I think it was Jordan Lewis. He's like, on the first look, you kind of look and see, like, and I don't know, I think Bontempelli's hands hit his own hand as he's going, like, he's putting his hands together for the smother, and like he flicks his own finger at one point, I think is what happens, because on the first view, you see it looks like it is touched, because you see Bontempelli's finger do a little thing, and the angle looks like the ball's going right past it, and John Lewis is going, yeah, it's 100% touched, like, all good. And then they show another angle, and you can see there's like 2 inches between the ball and Bontempelli from like a side view versus that behind the ball view. And the commentators are like, oh, geez, you went a bit early there, Geordie, or whoever it was. I think I've got it in my head that it was Jordan Lewis, and I'm happy to beat down on him for the moment. But yeah, and Willie the whole time was like, you know, he's just like, no, let's go. Like, you know, review that. And I thought it was really like, has he had the thought like a few weeks ago, like, you know, I think he's probably just an honest player. And that's probably, again, like me talking just before about the downside of what Willie's going through at the moment. I think he actually is a fairly honest player. And this kind of the sequence from a couple of weeks ago to now kind of shows that he does play footy on its merits. Just getting a little bit caught up in some other stuff at the moment, unfortunately. But as far as this goal goes, I thought it was a great one for the day, and had a little bit of drama in the review and everything. But yeah, a great opportunistic Willie Rioli goal. All right, it's time to get into the Player of the Year votes, which is, geez, I mean, it's a tough week to do it this week, in the worst possible way. Now it's time for the Creedcast Player of the Year voting. It's even worse when you have to listen to that all on your own. Anyway, I've got to re-record that at some point, but I really don't want to make it any worse. So Player of the Year votes, Jamie has been, Jamie on Saturday was getting set up for his housewarming party and all that stuff. So he didn't get to watch much of the game live, so he's caught up with it, which is always makes it, I find it difficult. I think Jamie's better at the rewatch sometimes than me, as far as finding, because I watching live, you get a bit more of an idea of, I like having a live idea of what my votes were, and then a post-game idea. I don't know. Anyway, I'm rattling now. It's getting late, and I also, if you're watching on YouTube, you probably know my eyes look red, and I swear I'm not high. I wish I was. I've been battling probably a few allergies and stuff. It's like this long, dry summer, like, you know, drought we're in. It's just stirring up so much like dust and shit at work at the moment. I'm just like, every day I'm just at the moment I feel like I've got a myriad of allergies and just kind of hay fever, except it's fucking autumn, not spring. So it's just an odd time of year. But yeah, I've been having to take a lot of pauses on this one and kind of just clear myself up. So yeah, if you're watching on YouTube, you might be seeing I just look like a mess at the moment. But anyway, Jamie's been kind enough to send in his votes for me to get to. So I'll read his out first. Won't go too much into the stats with these ones today, because we're not going to be chatting about them. Obviously, it's just me. But I'll read out his quick. He's got Jason HORNE-FRANCIS with the 1 vote. He's got Joe Richards in at the 2, Sam Powell-Pepper in at 3, Ollie Wines in at 4, and then best on ground, Zach Butters at 5. So there's some differences there for me. And I didn't know how to do it this week, because I just didn't think there was that many great players. And certainly Jason HORNE-FRANCIS getting in with the 1 vote is almost like it's just because you still give him the votes, because he did get the Did get a lot of contested ball, got the clearances as well, 7 clearances, 14 contested possessions for Jason Horne-Francis. Didn't use it very well, though, 40%. His goal kicking is fucking woeful at the moment, too. He had another one. I mean, yes, the conditions are, but he's shanking them so badly at the moment. You can't even fucking blame the wind. And he was one of the more reliable set shots, I think, last year for us. So hopefully he can sort out those yips soon, because obviously a lot of else what he's done is doing is good. But yeah, that was a pretty poor kind of ball usage game for a player that we actually do talk about having decent ball usage at times as well. But yeah, 41%. He had the 6 turnovers as well. So yeah, he's kind of a 7 clearance Jason Horne-Francis game you'd hope would come with a little bit better as far as overall use goes. So. Yeah, Joe Richards in it too for Jamie was a good one as well. I liked his tackling and in his, a decent amount. He had some decent numbers as well. I'm just looking for him here on my sheet. He had the 5 tackles, which is I think led the team. Apart from Zach Butters who had 9. But yeah, he had the 5 tackles and obviously the one that I nominated for our Wilson Gray Award this year. So I like seeing Joe Richards in his votes. And actually, I'd already just done my votes and I was like, I'm not going to let Jamie, because usually Jamie and I do this live, but I got to see them a couple of hours ago. I was like, no, I'm not going to let him influence me. So I'm just going to go with what I had. So I had Lorenz at 2. It's not usually the kind of stats game I would give maybe votes to, but in a game that just was so fucking shithouse, and Will Lorenz coming in, having not played any AFL this year and having played very little AFL to be fair at all. He had, used the ball at 87%, had 3 1%ers, a couple score involvements, had 3 intercept possessions as well, a couple of tackles. He kind of just did a little bit everywhere. How many contested possessions did he have? He had 7 of his. Sorry, I'm looking for his disposal number now. Yeah, 15 disposals. 7 of his possessions were contested possessions as well, so a decent number there for the amount of ball he had. I think just for a game that was just so shit, and for a player that has not much experience at all, thought I'm going to throw him a couple of votes there. Rosie, I got into my votes. I'm not sure about it, but I just weighted numbers, and I like that Jamie's got SPP in there as well, because Pal Pepper had a really good contested possession game. He had the 18 disposals, but he had the 11 contested. Ran at 67% usage, which is right on par with what the team was running at. A couple of score involvements. He had the 3 clearances. So yeah, sorry, I talked about it earlier. So he did get some stoppage work. He actually got a center clearance in there as well. So he did get involved, which is what Jamie and I have talked about, or Jamie has keyed in on a little bit, is that he'd like to see a bit of. So he did get a little bit involved in the game in that aspect. So so for I don't mind him getting the 3 votes from Jamie there. I gave them to Rosie. I think just he got enough of the ball and the meters gained. I don't know. But I was a little bit more annoyed with how we used him throughout the game, and then the game just went away from us. And I gave Rosie the votes on the day and just went with it, and I haven't changed it since. We both had Wines and Butters at 4 and 5. Wines had 13 contested, 64% almost. He had the 7 score involvements, which led the team. He had the 3 clearances as well, 1 from the centre, 2 from stoppage. 7 intercept possessions as well for Ollie, and he had the 3 tackles, a couple inside 50s. No one had a great game in this one, being the game it was, but Ollie's, considering a couple of weeks ago with the getting subbed out, he's bounced back the last couple of weeks with some pretty good games, and it's unfortunate we can't get the midfield, we can't get that cohesion going well enough to win some more contests and win some clearance battles and actually utilize Wines better, but he's playing okay. Obviously, Zach Butters, best on ground for both of us. He had 29 disposals. 24 disposals. He had 9 or 10 of those in the first quarter. So he unfortunately couldn't go on with it too much after that. Still was in the game, but got tagged out of it a little bit more probably after quarter time. He had the 9 tackles, which is incredible numbers. He kind of just fills out the stat sheet quite wonderfully. 7 inside 50s, 6 clearances, which he had the only had the 8 contested possessions, even though we know he can be a pretty contested beast when he wants to be as well. But 4 stoppage clearances too at the centre. Nearing 500 meters gained as well, a couple 1%ers. He was absolutely explosive in those first kind of 15, 12 to 15 minutes before they started putting a little bit more attention on him. Yeah, incredible player. No one got into the coaches' votes this week for Port Adelaide because Butters had a pretty good run since he'd gotten back of basically almost collecting every coach's vote he could in the games he'd played so far this year. But yeah, no one from Port got into the coaches' votes, which as I shared on the Instagram story yesterday, I think on the Creed Instagram, I just shared it and just said, fair. That's fair. No one deserved the coach's vote for Port Adelaide after that performance. So that about wraps it up for the review. I know it's a short one. It's not as, bounce off each other stuff. I try to get some stats in there, but it's hard. That's why I love doing the podcast with Jamie, is we get to bounce off each other. And sometimes, something one of the other ones says reminds you of something or brings something up or makes you think about something in a different way and add some context to it. And so, yes, I have missed Jamie for this review, and hopefully he'll be back on deck for next week's review of what will be a massive game. And we'll have a quick look ahead to our obviously huge game this weekend just now before I wrap up. All right, a quick look ahead. Obviously, a huge game coming up this week. It is our home showdown against the Adelaide Crows, 7:40 this Saturday night at the Adelaide Oval. Prime time slot, prime time location, prime time matchup in a game that we haven't had a huge amount of luck in over the last couple of years, and certainly coming off the weekend that both teams have had. Obviously, us with a devastating loss. The Crows with a pretty handy win. The kind of storylines write themselves as far as how the teams are going in. Just a quick look ahead to what we're looking at. Injury updates, both teams. Crows don't have too much of an injury list. Just Matt Crouch is 4 to 6 weeks as he's entering in a little bit of a rehab kind of stint to try to manage a hip injury that he's dealing with. Nick Murray, they've lost, which is a decent loss for them in their back line for 4 to 6 weeks as well. So he was in good form for the first month or so of the season. So he's a loss for them, but they still perform pretty well. I think they've got a decent defensive lineup, which of course, again, get around the Patreon show. We'll talk about the squads more in depth on Thursday night once we have them released. For Port Adelaide, the only one that's really a possibility for us this week is Travis Spoke. I think, Josh Sinn's still in concussion protocols, I think. So I don't think he's a chance to come back. But yeah, Travis Spoke is a test this week, apparently, which is interesting because it's back injury. I assume they've just not been exactly sure how to, just don't kind of wait and see on how it kind of, once it settles, because last week it was less like to be determined more or less as to when he could be back, and then this week is a test. So I guess it's just one of those back niggles that's kind of just depends on how it flares up rather than actually a kind of binary timeline as to its return, as to his availability. But he's going to be a test for this week. So yeah, it'll be an intriguing squad show this week. Certainly not just because of the injury list, but just with some of the disappointing performances last weekend. I'm not sure who we could bring back in, and I'd love to be chatting to Jamie about it now, but we'll just save the squads chat for obviously Thursday night for the squad show. So again, get around the Patreon. Otherwise, it's looking like a decent night, decent day in Adelaide. Mostly sunny, 23 on Saturday, so that will obviously come in for a nice kind of cool autumn evening on Saturday evening as good a conditions for early May footy that you could ask for, I think, based on what the forecast is looking like. So yeah, it's going to be a massive day. Obviously, the Sandful Showdown's on prior at Adelaide Oval as well, so I'm not going to be able to get down there early enough for that, but I'm hoping I might be able to catch a half of it at least. But if you're around, as we always say, shout out, get in touch with us on Instagram, and either Jamie or I or both would be happy to say g'day to any listeners out there, and catch up and hopefully have a beer and hopefully toast to what will be an impending surprise win. Or say, I don't know, it'll be interesting to see how Jamie's feeling after the weekend and everything. But just with how we play against the Crows over the last few years, like Matty Nick seems to just have this team play a way that we just haven't been able to handle well over the last few years. And considering how we are playing at the moment as well. But then, we could come out like we did against Hawthorn and just and blow them out of the water early, and I'll fucking hold on for dear life later. I'd love to not do that for once, but that's every possibility. But I do expect this to be, maybe it could be a tight tussle, but I am worried about just how we looked last week. We obviously do have a tendency to just respond after a fucking loss like that too. So I have no idea. I'm probably disaster planning a little bit for myself and just saying we're going to lose and hoping that we will win. I'll probably be tipping the Crows, I think. I do that a lot when I'm 50-50 on whether I think we can win. I just tip the other team because then I'm happy either way. So it's dumb fucking footy tipping thing that we dumb nuffies do. Like I went 2-0 for the Port and Crows games last week because I tipped fucking Crows and tipped Western Bulldogs, even though I would have preferred the results to go the other way as a fan. I am concerned for the game just based on how the Crows can play. The tall timber down forward, our forward line, our back line, I think kind of Sava looked a little bit tired last week, and he's playing a fair bit of time on ground since he's come back. So whether we do see Brandon Zerk-Thatcher make a comeback, that's probably one of the few little levers that we can pull. I'm assuming he's not on our injury list. I assume he's getting some match fitness back now too. So we will see on that front. Otherwise, there is some concern there for me. But obviously, I'll be down there and hoping for a win. And by the time Thursday's squad show comes around, maybe I'll have talked myself into a little bit more hope. And I certainly don't have no hope. I'm just concerned with, obviously, as most sport fans are, probably based on, the recency bias of the last weekend. That's about it from me. Ready to pack this one up. I am, I know Jamie's out with the sickness. I'm feeling it a little bit as the night's worn on as well. So, but thank you for joining us as always. Get around, the Twitter, the Instagram, the Facebook, wherever you want to I post in most areas, probably most active on Twitter and then Instagram stories and stuff sharing, because that's just where a lot of visual content is. And I enjoy Instagram for that aspect of it, for being able to share stuff. So, Twitter is, but you can message us anywhere and we'll get in touch with you. And again, get around the Patreon squad show every Thursday. There'll be more coming there as well. But it's $5.99 a month. You get 7 days free before you pay as well. And as I said, anyone that signs up in the next month, we'll send out a sticker pack at least, if not more, if you sign up at the more little a little bit more dollary dues coming to us with the sponsor tier as well. So that's about it. I am ready to knock out and sleep for 9 or 10 hours, I think. I have a day off tomorrow, and I'm very much looking forward to some much-needed rest after a couple of tough weeks of work and footy and commitments with this and everything. I need some sleep. So thank you as always, Port fan. We really, really appreciate you listening, and I'm looking forward to being back here with a hopefully recovered Jamie from his various ailments that he's dealing with over the last couple of days, and look forward to chatting to you guys on the main show here next week. But certainly, again, get around the squad show on Patreon in 2 nights' time as we build up to a massive, massive showdown. Prison bars, all the rest of it. Can't wait. Nothing more to say, but hit that sting.
Count the pair.
Cheers.